to have you. It took me 4 years to book you here today, and you had every intention to come. I know with you and your cello. I forgot your cello's name, but
this is Big
you had
Red.
Big Red. Okay, so yeah, you had every intention to come, and of course, we all know that the world changed on us, so we couldn't have her. But so lucky to be doing this with you online, and I think we're just, blessed to have you there. You've come had done our workshop. I don't even remember, but so many times in the past. So we were so lucky to have you there. Then, Stephanie, do you remember when she came? It was many years ago, right? um, so yeah. Anyways,
Yeah,
I
I don't
first
remember. It's been so long.
It's been a while, but
yeah.
I just loved it every time.
I think that was
yeah.
in elementary school.
Aren't
Yeah.
you still in elementary school, Sammy?
What was that?
I said, aren't you still in elementary school?
Yeah, something like that.
He can't leave. He's still in the elementary school.
Yeah, so we had her for many years, and then got busy. Workshops got put on hold, and then I went through withdrawal. So, but I first heard Amy perform. I believe I was quite young and an inexperienced teacher. I'm still young, but I was younger then. And I heard her perform at the National Cello Institute, and I was blown away. So she became my instant role model then. So, there's a list of accomplishments. I'm not going to read everything because it's going to take 10 minutes. But I thought it was very interesting to see that some of her students actually, this is the first time I knew this, but they fly from Alaska and Japan to have lessons with you.
Not during the pandemic, but
Not during the pandemic.
not during the pandemic.
I've always told stories to students of people sometimes come from LA to New York to get lessons, but Japan, wow, that is unbelievable. And of course, she's performed at many of the world-renowned concert halls as a soloist and chamber musician. And currently, she's teaching at the Juilliard pre-college school, and I guess that sort of preps students to get into Juilliard, right? Or yeah, if they want.
Oh, unfortunately, it's way more complicated. Pre-college is a college-level music school for kids who are high school or younger, but
Gotcha.
there is zero guarantee that they do have a leg up. They get to, if you're a pre-college student, you get to skip the pre-screening part
Right.
of junior auditions, but there's no flow through.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes. So that is just some of her accomplishments. And if you all are more interested in her, please check out her website. It's amybarston.com, I believe, or is it different? amybarston.com, and there's a lot of information there. There's also some funny YouTube clips. If you just put Amy Barston cello on YouTube, she's hilarious. So please check out some of her videos.
I don't intend to be hilarious, so this is not good. No, I'm just kidding.
Please check her out sometime. And so yeah, we had some questions. So what basically Amy will kind of take charge, but if any of the parents here, I don't have gallery view, so I don't know who's here. Okay, we have quite a few, but if any parents have questions, you're welcome to either unmute and blurt it out, or the friendlier way would be to either send it in chat and I'll be monitoring that. Also, if you just want to raise your hand, there's a raise hand button, and I'll see if I can catch those as well. But yes, so without further ado, Amy, just go ahead and take it away.
All right, I'm just gonna riff a little bit. I am a Suzuki kid, given a cello at a very young age with the intention of just looking cute with one, and then started actual formal lessons when I was 5, and had a really strict teacher, and it was really institutes and workshop teachers that kept me going, because my teacher was not fun at all, and I really needed a fun teacher. I wouldn't have made it if it hadn't been for like Rick Mooney and Rodney Farrar and Pam Davenport and this like the old crew, not old, but you know, the original crew of brilliant Suzuki teachers who came in, and we did cello choir and we played games, and it was those workshops and institutes that like kept me going. My mom was a very amazing, highly esteemed cello pedagogue, and we did not get along on cello growing up at all. So I was basically on my own, like just making a mess of practicing by myself. And honestly, I feel like I didn't learn how to really practice until I started teaching. And I started teaching really young. I was like 18 maybe, and somebody bailed at the last minute at the Ithaca Suzuki Institute, and they were they were totally desperate. And I was nearby, and they're desperate picking, and I went, and I really loved it, and I consider that like one of the greatest things that ever happened. Like realizing that, like, you know, 18 is a time where you're really self-focused. You're really like, you think the world is all about you, and being able to focus on little kids, and seeing like the complex relationship with the parents, like this was really cool. And so I started doing it every summer. I would go to school, practice all year, and then I would teach at like 9 institutes in the summer. And now I'm a parent myself. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. The 9-year-old plays violin. The 6-year-old plays cello. My 6-year-old is like a corporate litigator when we're practicing. She's like has so many great reasons why we shouldn't do the thing I just said, and she like has like tabulates like what we did 2 days ago, and she's like, you did it differently that time, and you're inconsistent, and she's like half litigator, half like clown, like she just wants to like goof around all the time. And my 9-year-old practices violin with her dad, who is a composer with no like he took piano lessons as a kid, but it was nothing like Suzuki. It was basically like he showed up unprepared every week for the piano teacher, and he's like really gung-ho into the Suzuki thing. He's like kind of got like a jealousy complex. He's like, it's not fair, you were raised with this. We have arguments about that all the time. And it's cool to see like he's the violin dad and I'm the cello mom, and it's cool to see like it's really different. I kind of stay out of their business. It's hard to stay out of their business because I'm big, like, I'm really nosy. Anyway, so that's where I am right now. And it's kind of amazing to have taught for so long as not a parent, preaching, you know, to parents. And I get it now. I also think there's something really valuable in having the teacher be kind of like the Yoda, like saying how it should be, and this is the way, and I have spoken, and then the parent kind of has to try to make good on that contract. I think there's something valuable in teachers who aren't parents too. So let's see. I'm sure I've said enough. Happy to I'd love to hear individual anecdotes, stuff you guys struggle with. I consider parent talks and group classes as group therapy for everyone, because we're all struggling with the same stuff, different levels, different amounts, but the struggle is real. And I think it's so there's a lot of things that I struggle with that I don't have the language to even stretch it out and understand it until I hear somebody else saying it. So I would just love to hear anybody's individual story, any individual questions. Yeah. Any similarities, anything really different?
Amy, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
So I recently started my daughter on cello, and I wanted to ask you, as being a teacher and parent, how has it are you different as a parent role? Are you the teacher in that role, or are you the mom yelling at her in that role, or it's very hard to balance that out?
Right. So I kind of followed some friends and my own mom in that so Zoe is my 6 year old. I just worked with Zoe by myself until she was about 5, and then I got her a teacher. And there's this kind of mutual intimidation between me and her teacher, both directions. And I knew I needed someone to oversee like my own weaknesses. Like basically, I am learning more from so the teacher is Abby Wakefield Hansen in Cleveland. She runs the Suzuki program at the Cleveland Institute of Music. She's younger than me. She's a totally different personality. I'm kind of like fly by the seat of my pants and everything, and she is like by the book. And so in choosing her for Zoe, I basically told her, I was like, you are going to have to keep me in line, because I just kind of I want to be Zoe's buddy. I don't want to be the ruler, the dictator. And I think that's the hardest thing as a parent, is like, I want to make it fun. I don't want to be the one to lay down the law. I want to pay somebody else to do that. So, and it's hard because teachers have different, really different methods. And I would say, as a teacher, my greatest weakness is I really want my students to like me. I want to have fun with them, and you can't do that with your own kid, as both the teacher and the parent.
So are you just dashing my dreams and saying I can't teach my daughter?
Not at all. Jim, I know you are way more organized and you're way more organized than I am. I just want to be like, yeah, we just got to be our own personalities. Right. But I do, I'm very careful. I after every lesson, I make a really careful list of what I'm supposed to do, because I will just go to town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say is, during the pandemic, I think the most helpful thing as both a teacher and a parent is to constantly ask myself, what is the most important thing right now? What is the most important thing? And most of the time, it's just that the kids feel safe and loved and supported, and that they feel connected. Because those are all the things that are gone, right? So in group class, which my kid is in my group class, I'm just the most important thing is that we feel connected and that we're having a good time. And of course, I'd be a liar if I said I wasn't constantly stressing quality. Of course, that's totally there. But when I get too into something, I just ask myself, what's the most important thing right now? And it's that we're connected, and that we leave feeling like something good happened. Do you have any more specific, maybe you can get the other people to fess up? What's the hardest thing for you, Jim? Oh yeah, wait, we have fessers.
Yes. Go ahead, Winnie.
So I taught every one of my kids piano for 2 years, because I studied piano for 13 years myself, but as a non-Suzuki person.
Yeah.
And I found that every day turned into lesson day. There was no independent practice,
Right.
and there was no delineation of when I was teacher, when I was parent, because I was just yelling at them all the time.
Totally.
And after about 2 years, I decided, I think I really would prefer that somebody else be the instructor, and then I'll just yell at them 6 days rather than 7 days.
They get it off on lesson day.
Yeah, actually they do get off on their own day, but then now that we have lesson day and group class day and master class day on separate days, then they say, can we get this day off too? And then I said, well, you can only choose one day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, we try to do shorter practices on the lesson or the group class day that are just games, and I still get pushback on that.
Right.
And sometimes I just need the day off.
Well, actually, that's what happened too. I have my most reliable kid practice on her own, because I told the teacher that Sammy, I told him I get burnt out supervising 3 kids, one after the other. So
That is
So he
amazing.
let me off on one kid.
That's amazing. And I saw also you had a question um, about friends who were formally trained like you, not in Suzuki, and you noticed that they didn't play into adulthood.
Right, right. Like all of us, basically, we got up to, Royal Conservatory, 8th, ninth, 10th grade, and I don't really see any of them really continuing unless those, maybe a couple of exceptions who did their ARCT, they now teach, but, most of us went into different careers and just hardly play. I mean, right now for me, I play when I have time, and then I play when I have to accompany the kids. So
Yeah, yeah. So I don't, yeah. You asked in your question, any common traits among students that continue to play as adults, and it's such a good question, and it's when I talk to musician friends, there's so much about the community of growing up with, and these are all piano friends, right? And I think with piano, it's the hardest because it's hard to create a sense of community within the piano world, and the Suzuki pianos teachers are able to do it. I mean, that's just an amazing feat to have pianists playing together all the time. And so my friends who are in music, I mean, we're constantly connecting with our old friends from music school and from our teacher's studio. I just had a reunion on Friday night with members of my old graduate school class, and I think it's the making music together that's a big part of it. Also, I think one thing I noticed with my professional musician friends who are in orchestras. With chamber music, it's a little bit different, but my friends who are in orchestras or teaching sometimes rarely go to concerts or rarely listen to music because it's a little bit of they have a little bit of a separation between work and what they do for fun. And I think it's also emotional that we're so wrapped up in the music that we don't, it's almost too vulnerable to listen, either because we're still competitive or we have our wishes as to what we're doing. And I think that getting the kids at a young age to listen a ton, like today I played my husband did this because I forget too often. My daughter is in Suzuki Book 4 violin, playing a perpetual motion, a fast piece, and I'd never played her any Paganini before. And like, just she's 9, and I thought, oh my god, we've never played her like the Paganini Caprices or the Paganini Violin Concerto. Like, how fun to hear that for the first time. And she dug it. She's listening to like the Frozen soundtrack all the time. She's not listening to classical music unless we put it on for her, and she really dug it. So basically, I think my answer is a sense of community through listening, through forging friendships, through cello choir, through orchestra, through chamber music. I think that stuff is endlessly valuable. What else we got?
Amy, we got a question that came in on the chat. It's sort of the opposite of what Winnie was saying. The parents who don't have musical background themselves sometimes feel kind of challenged. I know for me, I've been teaching I've been teaching 20 years, and I don't think I've ever taught a student whose parent was a professional violinist. Just a few who've played violin, and quite a few of them have played instruments. Most of them have, but not all of them have. So it's been a huge variety. And that's a good question. I have had definitely some parents who have zero musical background, and maybe they can teach Twinkle, because I always tell them in the beginning it's just about how you curve your pinky, and stuff like that. But when they want to help their students more, that can be a challenge for them.
Okay, I love this question because it has been my experience that my friends who are professional musicians who are the most creative and the most confident come from families of non-musicians. That it was their thing and they found it, and it was a kind of a thing that they could be like, my parents don't do this, but I do. I'm like, this is my voice. Like my parents begged me not to go into music, and that was like the most surefire way that I was going to. And I have heard that from many friends. But the musician parents, and we have to be very wary of this, like there's too much at stake for us. So we tend to screw it up. Like the kids, it becomes like a battle of wills, and that like it's even more frustrating. Your kid is going to tell you don't know what you're talking about, because that's the kid's job. Like that's what a 6-year-old is supposed to do, right? And then it really hurts when you actually do want to be like valued by everyone, especially your kid, and you're like, do you know who I am? Do you know that people come from Japan? And she's like, I don't care. You don't know anything. And it just becomes too personal. And so I think that the parents that are non-musicians have a great thing going in that they can really let the kid be the expert. You can kind of play that role, like, show me how to do this, because I don't know. But of course it can bite you in the backside too, because they can be like, you don't know anything, I get to do it my own way. So it's a little, a bit of both. In terms, the musician kids have, they have a little bit of privilege in that, like the music might be already in the house. It might, like, they might be exposed to more, but I think that non-musician parents can, like, just play a lot of music. I don't mean to oversimplify, but like, we have so many resources, right? Just like be curious about what's out there, and they can see you being curious.
Well, maybe Jim also has some questions that he has heard of, but I'm just thinking of the ones that I've heard of. I had a question come in about how to make your child or help your child to encourage them to slow down when they practice. Just play a little slower. And I know that's a huge problem. They just want to play at the speed they want to play.
Yeah, totally. There's a great cartoon. It's of a chicken playing violin, and it says, I don't want to practice. I just want to play the parts where I sound awesome. And it's so true. So this has been a very helpful tool in our household. The Dr. Beat. I don't know if this is familiar to you guys. It's expensive, but oh my gosh, it's so awesome. It yells numbers at you.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1,
in like
2,
a
3,
really
4.
offensive
1, 2, 3.
German accent. No, it's not really German. But so my kids have Zoom piano lessons with Margoja Lees in Hartford. Basically, we took this quarantined into Zoom as an opportunity to just like try new things. So my kids started playing piano, and they're taking piano lessons with. We asked around, and there's this great Zoom teacher, and she has the kids use Dr. Beat or a metronome from the very beginning, and they love controlling this thing. Between Alexa and Dr. Beat, the kids have so many things to boss around. It kind of takes some of the edge off for the parents, for us. But the Dr. Beat is great in that they get to control the tempo, and we write out for them, like, you have to play this etude at quarter note equals 60. And it's just what you have to do. And I like to say that, like, the teacher is the dictator, and I'm just here to, I'm just your friend helping you do what the teacher said. So, I don't know, Jim, maybe you could put on, like, an evil mustache when you're the teacher, and then put on, like, a funny hat when you're the practice parent.
So I use FaceTime, and I tell students if they do it right, I'll turn myself into a poo emoji. That basically works for.
Do you make your daughter have her lessons on FaceTime? Because you need like a hat for your daughter, right? You put on the fake mustache when you're the teacher, and then like the red bow tie when you're just her friend helping her.
I'm scary dad when I teach though, but I gotta, yeah. But emojis work sometimes.
Oh, it's so fun. And I would say that giving the super small chunk to play is easier to play slow than like the whole thing. Like, like I cringe at the idea of playing the whole thing slow. But doing super little chunks, slow 5 times, and then making the chunk a little bigger, that's a little bit more bite-sized. Yeah, I like to think of it in terms of like, what's the kid's job? The kid's job is to be a kid. And it's my job to break it up into bite-sized, doable pieces. And I'm not saying it's easy. You know, it's not easy, it's worth it. But remembering that their job is to fight against it and our job is to keep trying things until we find something that's more acceptable to the kid. Also, there's Metronome Bot, so you don't have to spend $150 on Dr. Beat. Metronome Bot is a fun app. I think there's a new one that's better. Metronome Bot is like what I used 10 years ago, and it's like a cute robot that counts out loud for you in like a Southern accent. That's fun to use, but for me, like I myself have such a screen addiction that I try to just keep the phone out of the practice as much as I can. And I just notice how so I love to play games, but my husband tries not to play so many games because he's like, then the game becomes the thing and they get distracted by the game. I'm okay with that. But you kind of need a lot of time.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, we had a couple of hands raised. I think one of them was Maya. Was your hand?
Yes, hi, this is Maya, Orion's mom. Orion is this Papa student playing perpetual motion at the moment. I have a question. I have a kid who is great, you know, beautiful sound, long bow, too long, I would say. And, you know, and he's like a Play-Doh. You tell him do this and, you know, and he picks it up, he does it. But he has these memory glitches. You know, I know that he knows a song, and if he has to play it like first time, he would make all these like memory glitches mistakes, you know, and second time is smooth. So I'm like, you know, what do I do with this kid? You know, put him to meditate or, you know, something. I'm like, Orion, if I wake you up in the middle of the night and tell you, you know, play third phase of Allegro, you got to do it, you know. Like, so I was just wondering, you know, how to help him to overcome these memory glitches. You know, I know that he knows the song, but something, I don't know, it never comes out smooth first time.
Yeah. So so maybe the questions I would ask are what's the root of the problem? Like, what's causing him to not get it the first time?
Oh, I think it's his personality. You know, he's just kid like that. I mean, when he gets immersed in something, that's it. He can do it for hours. But it's his personality.
Right. So one of the things I like to tell my kids like that is, it's actually from an old deodorant commercial. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Right? Secret, the deodorant. And the idea being that, you know, when you're performing, you're connecting with other people. It's outside of yourself. And so you have to be an actor. You have to get in the mental space where you're ready to fully connect and put your story out there. And you can't have a messy run through before the actual performance because that's it. That's the performance. Mm-hmm. Right? So maybe building into the performance a moment of like, I also say like before you perform, you need 6 seconds of silence just to center yourself. Mm-hmm. And maybe in that 6 seconds running through, actually I would say before that, maybe 12 seconds. So for 6 seconds first, you run through, like in your mind, you just sing through the hardest part, and then you calm down for 6 seconds, and then you start to play and trying that. And it's interesting with both kids and and parents and just humans. Like something might seem like one thing, but really be something else. Like it might be nerves. It might be that it's really hard to be centered. It might be like, for instance, I talk a lot when I'm nervous, and my good friends will tell me like, you are just babbling right now. Like, is something wrong? And it could be the same thing with like playing too fast. When you start, you're just, those 6 seconds of silence are terrifying, right? And so we all avoid them. It's also like when you're performing, if you're performing a Bach suite on cello or a partita or sonata on violin or sonata on piano, those moments between the movements, that's where you feel the most naked. And so I try to teach my students to like embrace those moments. What feels like 1 second to you is a microsecond. So build that into your practicing. The other thing about memory too is memory slips happen. Like they are just a routine part of being a musician. And I like to say that performance is 2% inspiration, 99% crisis management. And so so 2% inspiration, 98% crisis management. You have to be like ready for anything when you're performing. I was at Carnegie Hall a couple years ago, and Andras Schiff, my favorite pianist, was playing a Mozart concerto, and he had a memory slip within the first like 8 measures. And he just calmly stopped and turned to the audience and he said, "I'd like to start that over if that's okay with you." And this is Andras Schiff. He's like the greatest pianist who ever lived. And I just love it when people make that stuff real.
Thank you. And I'll ask one more question. How do you know when it's enough to stop practicing? And is there a time to be strict, or should we ever be strict as, parent practicing body with our kid?
Can you say that question? Like, say it again. I'm not sure I got it.
Yeah. So how do you know first when it's the time to stop practicing? Kid gets a little bit frustrated. You see more wiggles, or is that enough? Or there's more room to practice. And the second question is there a time to be strict sometimes? When you see things getting.
Yeah. This is a great question, and I really struggle with this. I tend to be like, we did it, we tried, we're done. When I think actually my kid she really could do more. And sometimes the wiggles and the goofing around is just like a relaxing into it. And if I find myself getting too strict, I'm kind of losing sight of what I'm after. It has more to do with my frustration than with hers. I don't really have a set time, and we practice before school, which makes it have to end when it has to end. So, I kind of feel like it's an eternal experiment. But, like, sometimes if I back off a little bit, I'll find her taking a little bit more charge over what's happening.
Okay.
Right now we're working on lifting her arm, her wing, swinging her wing when she does down bows and up bows at the beginning of at the bottom of the bow. And it's just really hard for a 6-year-old. And I'll try to like control it for her, and she just hates it when I'm just touching her arm. And so, it's like I'm just constantly trying to switch gears, and I get frustrated really quickly. So, I think it's just kind of a constant rotation. Like back off one day, go longer the next.
Okay. Yes. And so do you like practice during different times of the day, or you always have a set schedule? Because I think my kid is like morning person, but I always end up practicing like in the late afternoon, so
Yeah,
no, about it.
We do it in the afternoon when there's no time in the morning. There's more time in the morning now because of the pandemic, so we're taking advantage of that. and my kids play piano too, so we like the piano is like the other instrument. It's like
Yes.
they do it on their own and they do it after dinner.
Okay.
And the other thing is like I was not a good practicer as a kid, but it's become kind of it's just part of our schedule. The kids just know they have to practice after dinner, and they just go and do it. And I was like, that was not how it was for me. Like I was constantly being yelled at to practice, and then it just would get put off all day.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy. Thank you.
Sure.
Stephanie, I think you had your hand raised too.
Okay, hello. Hi, Amy. I have 2 kids in Suzuki, so I'm a 5-year Suzuki parent, not a musician, but from a musical family. So I have high standards when it comes to sound quality. And I don't know if this is a question or more of a confessional, but I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the Suzuki triangle and the relationship between the practice parent and the teacher. And you were mentioning that, the parent is the fun one that wears the fun hat and the teacher is more the strict one. But in a pandemic situation, I know a lot of people maybe can relate to this. We haven't seen our teacher face to face very many times in the past year. And I have one daughter who is just barely getting into book 1 and never had that experience to enjoy the fun side of, Suzuki festivals and in-person group class. She was just finishing pre-Twinkle when the pandemic hit. And I have another daughter who has just finished a very technical book 3 and she's about to start book 4. And so I guess my question is maybe specifically, what do you guys all feel is the role of the pandemic practice parent? And has that changed? Because it's becoming harder for me to just be the fun one at home when I feel like I am always doing more than my share of the work in the triangle, trying to just keep them, on track and motivated when our schedule has, become more. Well, we're homeschooling this year for the first time, so we don't have the same routines that we used to have. And so I'm wondering if you could just define and maybe just remind me what you think the role of the practice parent should be at home, because I feel like I'm becoming more of the pusher and the enforcer, and not just in getting them to practice, because they still will, but how do you deal with that Suzuki triangle during a pandemic and keeping kids motivated when, like you said, the music in Suzuki is about sharing and community. And those are my favorite things about Suzuki, is when the kids can play together. And so when those things are now not available, where do we go from there? I guess that's my question.
That's the $1 million question.
Right? I just get right to the point.
I love it. And as pandemic parents, like there's no path here. Nobody's ever done this before. And in fact, it's kind of amazing that any of us are handling any of this, right?
We haven't quit, so that's a plus. We're still going.
I mean, that's huge. That's huge. I mean, and the fact that you guys are here at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, that's totally amazing.
Oh, I want to be here. We all want to be here.
Yeah, that's just amazing. So does anybody else have anything to add to that? Or
I'm just wondering, should we be more fun and maybe lower our standards a little? Again, I have a daughter going into book 4, so it's getting more technical, and she has all the skills with the great sound. I don't know if it's I haven't seen my teacher much in person, or just that age and that stage in Suzuki. She started, before kindergarten and has been doing great and progressing really well. But she's that age where she's becoming more of a preteen. So maybe there's that issue of how do you get a preteen to stay motivated? And maybe you can relate to that as a Suzuki, veteran, from a student's point of view. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you erring on the connecting with your kid side, having fun side, being on that side the most, because like in the question, what is the most important thing right now?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Your kid being able to trust you and have your support is the most important thing. That being said, there's a couple of silver linings in the pandemic too, that like for instance, we're doing a lot more FaceTime with grandparents, a lot more
Mm-hmm.
Zoom. Like my kids constantly, like they see me and my husband teaching on Zoom all the time. They want to teach on Zoom too.
Uh-huh.
So they have, so like, grandparents, we set it
Uh-huh.
up. All they want to do is be co-hosts and like block each other out of the meeting. Like that's what they want to do. They want to remove their sister.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It's so funny. But anyway, so we have Zoom concerts for the grandparents or the aunt and
Yes.
uncle,
Mhm.
whatever, where they get to play maybe together or separately for family. So it's another way where we're focusing on connecting.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
it's
true.
the most like amazing performance, but it's playing for an audience.
Right. Yeah.
Time.
Yeah, I have to say, my 10-year-old daughter just told me, she goes, as soon as church opens again, I want to be the first one to play special music at church. And I should be like, that's so great, but I'm freaking out. I'm like, we haven't performed in such a long time.
Yeah. And
But they like to perform too.
I think we all sort of suspend our view on what's a perfect performance for a while and just
Yeah.
let the kids, work those muscles. And then there's these fun apps, like, and the kids are way better at this than I am, like acapella and using iMovie, where
Oh,
they
yeah.
can play the piece that they're working on, and then the teacher can play an accompaniment, and you've got
Oh.
side by side, or the kids can make something up and record it side by side. So acapella, ACAPELLA.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the kids are. It's funny. My kids are like, they surprise me. My students, they surprise me who is into it and who isn't. Like I had these preteen girls who I thought would just love it, and they're sisters, and they're at the same level. I thought they'd be all over, playing book 4 together on acapella, and it's the 6-year-old boy who's like, stop making acapella videos of himself.
Oh, wow.
So really, like, and I have my Juilliard class. I have them playing the Bach double on cello. 12 of them playing together, and
Cool. That's cool.
I thought they'd be so into it, but it was like pulling teeth to get them to do it. Yeah. So you kind of, like, again, we just keep trying stuff. Just keep trying stuff. You don't know what's going to work.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a great question. I wish I had more answers. Anybody, like, group therapy, if anybody has anything.
Yeah, that was my group therapy confessional there.
Yeah, maybe we can take 1 or 2 more quick questions. I want to end a little early so we can switch over to our next classes that start at 10, but we can take a few more ideas and thoughts to wrap it up. Jim, did you have any questions from anybody that you?
Not now, but I'm gonna call on Winnie.
When's a good time to start a second instrument? And are there certain second instruments you shouldn't start if you play cello primarily, or if you play violin primarily? Because I got 2 violin kids, 1 cello kid, and or should they be like more independent on their primary instrument? Because I cannot imagine doing what I do right now and doubling that.
Totally. And so what we're doing right now is we are, cello and violin are the primary instruments, and we've just added in piano as the independent instrument. And we made sure that it was okay with the teacher. We basically said, we are, this is a pandemic thing, and we heard you're a fantastic teacher, and we just want to make sure it's okay with you. We are not practicing with our kids. Like, we just can't do it. And the teacher gave her thumbs up. She's like, okay, like, I get it. I know you guys are serious and you're committed. And basically, we're using piano as the instrument where the kids are in charge of their own work. They love the teacher, so they want to deliver for the teacher. Sometimes they don't do as well as they could. Sometimes the teacher catches them. You didn't. Oh, and we also made sure it was okay with the teacher that we're not there to take notes. So this is a teacher who takes notes for the kids. She just sends, at the end of the day, she just sends a short list. This is what we did today. This is what you're supposed to do. And she's great. She's very specific. She says, this is what you have to do every day, and this is what you have to do every 3 days. So it's very specific. So I love the idea that they're not going to mess up their primary instrument by practicing alone, but they have this other instrument where they're kind of figuring it out. But it has to be okay with the teacher. And for a Suzuki teacher to be okay with that was kind of mind-blowing for us. Now with cello and violin, it's a little trickier because position and the way you create the sound is so much, with the piano, the keyboard is all right there. Of course, everything has to be right. I don't know, does anybody have somebody who's playing cello or violin as a secondary instrument, and how does it go? I don't know with that, but I have students who have guitar as a second instrument or a wind instrument as a second instrument, and they kind of take it that way. Like, this is an instrument that's I'm doing at school or I'm doing on my own. But as a string person, I wish I had piano lessons. Like, the way you learn everything, oral skills, music theory, it's all piano based. So that stuff in college would have made a lot more sense to me if I had had some basic piano training. So I can't highlight, secondary piano enough. Any thoughts? No?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, good.
Oh, I was just going to say, if there's anything else we want to, did you have anything else you wanted to share with us, or did anybody have any last questions?
I just had another question from somebody else, which was attending music camps with daily classes. So first of all, pandemic aside, I can't stress how important institutes and workshops are in terms of like year-long inspiration, creating like friendships that last forever. I'm still friends with the kids I went to Stevens Point, Wisconsin Suzuki Institute with when I was 7 years old, like lifelong friendships. But somebody asked, I'm having a hard time getting my child to practice after a long day of workshop classes, and to work on the practice points before the next day's lesson. Institutes or workshops, it's like 5-6 hours a day of classes, and then to have to practice. I think you nailed it in the question, whoever asked that. Like, bring it down to the minute, like the smallest chunk. What were the points? Like, what is the teacher expecting of you? What can we actually do in, the 6 minutes before we brush our teeth? Like, really harness those expectations for the moment. There is very little you can do, but just a mental refresher. Yeah, I think that's really valuable.
Are there any tools that you use to motivate your own child, or no parents that use tools like 1 hour of practice time means 1 hour of screen time, or you get jelly beans in a jar, or like what do you think works for
Oh my God, we've
motivation?
tried. We've done everything. It's a constant rotation. So with my kids with 6 and 9, we use a lot of board games. We use board games. We use just anything that counts something. Like, we use, if you can move ahead, or if you can count, or I mean, we practice at 7:30 in the morning, but I use M&Ms if I have to. I have very low standards. It's whatever works. But we do, so our kids get screen time at 5 p.m. every day, unless there's a reason to move it around. And so we might add, you get an extra minute of screen time, or we have, like, it depends on everybody's sort of the way their own relationship with the screens or sugar or whatever. But I use a spinner so that my kids feel like it lands on sight reading, or it lands on scales, or it lands on tonalization or review or preview or whatever. They feel like they have some kind of control. But really, I'm the one who makes the spinner.
Right. I was just seeing a YouTube video last night of a violinist that loved video games. So once he had that standard, he would practice 4 hours because he can then get 4 hours of video game time. So, but now he's famous.
And now, is this Ray? Who is this?
It's Rob Landis. He does like a bunch of YouTube videos. He's a millionaire on YouTube. But yeah, that's what motivated him is giving what he wanted in return for practicing. So
Yeah, worked.
Anyways, yeah, Stephanie. So I think we'll give a little break to Amy before her next class. And were there any like last minute questions we can squeeze in, or anybody? If not, we'll close it out. And please go to your next class. You get about 7 minutes break. And the book 1 cello beginner class will probably remain in here, right?
Right.
Okay. And also, please remember when you're in your classes, please change the name that appears to the student name so that the teacher can refer to you. All right. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Thanks so much for
Pleasure.
joining us.